On August 26, 2023, the world lost a game show legend, Bob Barker, who hosted The Price is Right from 1972 through 2007, a 35-year career on the game show, a 50-year overall career in television, which includes Truth or Consequences before The Price is Right, sadly passed away at the age of 99 years old. Tonight, we pay tribute to Mr. Barker, and joining me for this special tribute are members of the Pricing Game Recap Team representing New Jersey, Wisconsin, and Oregon. Gentlemen, thank you for your time as we pay tribute to the world's greatest master of ceremonies.
Thanks for having us here, Nick. Thanks.
We're going to make this very special for Bob. He's watching up above, and I know he's smiling down at us as we pay tribute. Now, to begin, I will have the member from Oregon read his own tribute to Bob. So, if you please.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I did have this little tribute to Bob written out just to make sure when I was blessed with the opportunity to stay home from school on days and watch a master of his craft. But some of my most vivid early memories of this man are closely tied to the many times I was left at the house with my maternal grandmother. While most of the Price episodes I watched growing up were nothing special, this man, Bob Barker, made it known you were a part of something special every time you tuned in. Mind you, it wasn't just at 10 a.m. when I saw his show. In a time when VCRs and VHS tapes were the means of taping what you wanted to watch later, I would watch the recorded shows with my immediate family, usually mom and grandmothers. And every time we watched, Bob went all out to make the contestants and the studio audience and the home audience feel welcome and give everyone he could a fantastic prize. One of the first prize specials I saw as a kid was the 25th anniversary special in 1996. In addition to 3 contestants playing pricing games, there were clips of some of the show's most memorable moments. At the time, I was actually convinced the show was coming to an end, but how wrong was I, and how relieved was I to be wrong? But before I get to those clips, I would like to share some of my earliest vivid memories of the show. Once, there was a showcase where Roddy went out with the models, and they slapped him. That was on one of the VHS tapes. Then there was one of the models playing a food critic and disdainfully comparing her food to prizes in the showcase. I can't remember exactly which analogies were used, but it was something along the lines of, this shrimp tastes like it was run over by a truck. And then, of course, there was the time that Bob had what certainly felt like the first contestant that ever knew how to play the check game. announcer, Johnny Olson, remarked, "These people have given their all for you." In the years since, Bob recalled that infamous moment in the absolute best way possible. She came on down, and they came on out. An animal lover through and through, Bob's animal activism carried over to Price. Sometimes the items up for bid would come with a four-legged friend up for adoption. Or it could be a different animal, like a bird or even a fish. But as we all know by now, there came a time in the show's run when Bob made it his trademark to end the show by reminding us to, say it with me, have our pets spayed or neutered. Even though I missed him on Price after his last show, as I always will, I could hardly believe he was able to keep on keeping on as host of the longest running game show in television history, especially considering his age. As much as I was hoping he'd reach 100, supposedly he wanted to live to the highest amount on the big wheel. I was kind of amazed he even got close. Sticking to a vegetarian diet and ways to be active can have that effect. Wait, I almost forgot. Bob had a very memorable cameo in the movie Happy Gilmore, which I think was his only appearance in a feature film, but I don't know. Not entirely sure. In the movie, Bob teams up with the titular Happy, a would-be hockey player played by Adam Sandler, whose motivation for joining the professional golfers tour is to make enough money to buy back his grandmother's last house. But at the tournament is a heckler hired by the tour's golden boy, Shooter McGavin, who feels threatened by Happy's presence. This heckler calls Happy a jackass at every turn and throws him off his game, much to Bob's displeasure. Soon, friction develops between the two, and they engage in a hockey-style brawl, which Bob eventually wins. Bob accepted the part on the condition that he win the fight. I must admit, I cringed at first when I saw that scene, seeing someone as fragile as Bob getting beat up. But then, I found he wasn't so fragile after all. He did learn those moves from Chuck Norris, and in this one scene, it paid off. From then on, attendees at a Price taping always wanted to hear Bob say, "Now you've had enough, bitch." That was his line after knocking out Adam. He later wrote in Priceless Memories that whenever someone mentioned that scene to him, he would say, "Adam Sandler couldn't whip Regis Philbin." Although he also said that Alex Trebek or Pat Sajak was another name he could have used in that sentence. Anyway, wherever you are, Bob, I want to extend my most heartfelt thanks for all the memories, for all the prizes, animals, all the cars, all the refrigerators, all the consequences, all the punches thrown at Adam Sandler. You made it all worthwhile. I think I speak for everyone here when I say I couldn't be more grateful. And say hi to Adam when he comes up there too.
That was a very well-written tribute by you, my Oregonian friend, and very well said.
Yeah,
That was a
for sure.
very, very lovely start to this tribute for Bob. Now, my special request of the Oregon member, I am going to read Chapter 1 of Priceless Memories, Bob's autobiography.
Wait a second.
Oh,
Before you do that, I thought I'd share the little preface.
oh yes, please Please, let's hear the preface before we go to chapter 1.
Yeah, I always thought it'd be a little nice to hear how he got his big break.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so here goes. From Priceless Memories, written in conjunction with Digby Deal, I think. I think that sounds. Am I pronouncing that right? Well, here goes.
That's correct, I would say.
A phone call from Ralph Edwards. If you are 50 years old or younger, I have been on national television your entire life. And I would like to begin this book by telling you how I got there. Hollywood mythology is full of overnight success stories. The urban legend of the discovery of Lana Turner in Schwab's drugstore is the best-known example. But the entertainment business doesn't really work that way. Before producers are ready to risk a lot of money on you, they demand proof of your ability, your experience, and your professionalism. In other words, it takes many years of hard work to become an overnight success. On the other hand, I received one unforgettable phone call from Ralph Edwards that truly made possible everything else that happened to me in a long and fortunate life. My overnight success began in 1956. Nearly 7 years after my wife Dorothy Jo and I moved to Hollywood in pursuit of audience participation host opportunities for me. At the time, I was doing a weekly radio program on the local CBS station for Southern California Edison. It was called The Bob Barker Show. I named it myself. Dorothy Jo produced the show. Southern California Edison was, and is, the electric power company for almost all of the Los Angeles metropolitan area. At the time, Edison maintained what they called electric living centers all over their service area. Essentially, the centers were appliance store showrooms with theater seating and a microphone. Before I continue, I just want to let you know that this book is from 2009, so some lines in this book might be just a little bit dated. Anyway, on the stage were all sorts of ranges, refrigerators, freezers, dryers, anything and everything that used electricity. These were the gleaming modern furnishings of the dream kitchen of the mid-1950s. And the Edison centers offered regular demos in the hope that people would go out and buy new electric appliances for their homes. Edison didn't necessarily care whether you bought Westinghouse or Hot Point or Maytag, as long as it plugged in. My show featured homemakers who attended these demonstrations and wanted to be on the radio. Dorothy Jo and I would visit 2 different cities a day, a show in each city. We walked a lot of miles, traveling out to the rapidly growing suburbs of Los Angeles, including Pomona, San Bernardino, Oxnard, and Ventura, sometimes as far away as Lancaster, to visit these Edison electric living centers and broadcast on KNX radio. One day shortly after Thanksgiving in 1956, Ralph Edwards was driving his daughters, who were little girls in those days, to an ice skating lesson. To say that it was my good fortune that he turned on his car radio and tuned in to the Bob Barker Show is an understatement. Ralph Edwards was already a broadcasting legend. Beginning as a radio announcer, he went on to become the producer of This Is Your Life and a long list of other shows, including, of course, Truth or Consequences. Truth or Consequences was Ralph's own creation and was based on a game he played on the family farm as a kid. I had been a big fan of Ralph Edwards. I used to listen to him when he hosted Truth or Consequences on the radio, which he began doing in 1940. He painted such a vivid picture of what was happening that you didn't have to see it, describing things with such flair and detail that you enjoyed every moment of it. In 1950, they brought Truth or Consequences to television, and Ralph hosted that version as well until 1954, when Jack Queen for a Day Bailey took over. When we came to California, Dorothy, Joe, and I used to go to watch Truth or Consequences live. Ralph built and maintained a tremendous level of achievement. He was almost frenetic in the way he bounded around the stage on Truth, not at all as he appeared on This Is Your Life. Occasionally, after playing a joke on a contestant, Ralph would look into the camera and say to the viewers, "Aren't we devils?" People all over the country picked up on it and were saying, "Aren't we devils?" It was the same thing that was to happen with Come On Down a couple of decades later. By late 1956, Dorothy, Joe, and I had a small advertising agency on the Sunset Strip from which we serviced advertisers for the Bob Barker Show. And when I say small, I really mean small. Dorothy, Joe, and I were it, which meant that when I was out meeting with a client, she was the only one in the office. "Ralph Edwards called you," she said casually as I walked in the door. This was nothing to be casual about. "You mean the famous Ralph Edwards?" I asked. "I guess so," Dorothy Joe replied. "They said Ralph Edwards Productions." I started getting excited. "What did he want?" I asked. "The lady who called said he wants to talk to you." "Give me that number." I sat down immediately and dialed the number. Ralph came on the line quickly. He said, "I'm calling you because I have a show called Truth or Consequences that's going back on TV as a daytime program. I'd like to talk with you about the possibility of you hosting it." I could hardly believe my ears, but I managed to say, "Yes, sir." "I was wondering when it would be convenient for you to see me," Ralph said. I knew that Ralph Edwards Productions was located on Hollywood Boulevard at the corner of Cherokee. I said, "I'll be right over. I can be in your office in 15 minutes. Perhaps a bit too eager, I started to get up and head for the door. Even before I hung up the phone, the cord pulled me off short. With a smile in his voice, Ralph assured me that it wouldn't be necessary to be there in 15 minutes. "Bob," he said, "how about tomorrow or the next day?" I promised a meeting. Ralph Edwards Productions had what looked to me like a complete floor, offices in every direction. I told a young lady at a desk near the elevator that I was Bob Barker and that I had an appointment with Mr. Edwards. She asked me, "Ralph or Paul Edwards?" "Ralph Edwards," I answered. She picked up a phone, spoke softly for a moment, and said, "Mr. Edwards is expecting you, Mr. Barker. His office is at the end of this hall." She gestured down a long hall. As I walked down the hall, it seemed as if there were 1, 2, or sometimes 3 people busily working away in the offices on both sides of the hall. I thought, this is one busy place. In the years to come, I learned how right I was. When I reached Ralph's office, the door was standing open and he was seated at his desk writing. As I came through the door, he quickly rose and stepped around his huge desk, extending his hand. He said, "Young man, I like the way you do your radio show." As we shook hands, he closed his office door behind me, indicated a chair for me near his desk, and sat down in his own chair. Of course, Ralph's opening remark that he liked my work on radio did wonders to put me at ease, which was probably exactly what it was intended to do. Ralph looked even younger. He was 42, than he had looked when Dorothy, Joe, and I had attended his show. He was wearing a light brown, perfectly fitted, single-breasted suit, a white shirt, and a dark brown and yellow tie. I thought he looked every inch the television star indeed he was. His office was spacious and beautifully furnished in brown and beige. It was just the two of us as Ralph and I sat and talked. He asked some questions about my background and my experience doing audience participation shows. Apparently, my interviewing regular folks in the Edison Electric Living Centers struck him as good preparation for Truth or Consequences. What did you do before you came to California? Ralph asked. I told him how I had gotten my start at KTTS in Springfield, Missouri, while I was in college. That's exactly how I started in radio when I was at the University of California in Berkeley, Ralph said. And I got the impression that he was pleased we had that in common. Ralph wanted to know if I was married, and I told him that I married my high school sweetheart and that my wife produced my radio shows. Splendid, he said. I think we may be onto something here. I'll be in touch. Incidentally, Paul Edwards was Ralph's older brother. I ended up doing Truth or Consequences for Ralph for 18 years, and not once did Ralph and I argue about money. Paul always handled that. A few days after my first meeting with Ralph, he called me and said, I'd like to have you come in and meet some of the people you'd be working with if you did Truth or Consequences. I went back and had a pleasant meeting with them. At the end of the meeting, Ralph said, I'll be in touch. When I left, I had no idea whether they liked me or not, but shortly thereafter, Ralph called and invited me to another meeting. He wanted me to meet some of his representatives and a few others. At that time, MCA had both a talent and a production arm, and they represented Ralph. This time when I got there, I was looking at a room full of people. Long before the movie Men in Black, MCA agents were often described by journalists and industry pundits as the men in the black suits. When I arrived, I found that their nickname was richly deserved. All three of the men from MCA were clad in practically identical suits. Identical black suits. Also present were executives from NBC, as well as a couple of people from Ralph's production company, and of course, Ralph himself. We sat and talked some more. At the end of the meeting, Ralph gave me a cheery smile. Like the previous meetings, said, I'll be in touch. By this time, I was beginning to think, Barker, can you tolerate many more of these meetings? Can you last through this? In reality, only a short time had passed since our initial conversation, but the days between meetings seemed to stretch on interminably. I never knew when I'd hear from him again, or if I would hear from him again. It was right around my birthday, December 12th, when he finally called once more. Although the show was to be televised on NBC, Ralph, who had connections with all the networks, asked me to come down to what is still the oldest CBS television station in the country, on Sunset Boulevard in what is known as Gower Gulch. At the time, it was the nerve center for all of CBS, nationally, locally, and everything else, I guess. Ralph wanted me to do an audition before a live audience. We went over the script, and he told me what he wanted me to do. The show was a segment of Truth or Consequences. Would you like to have somebody do the role for you, he asked. No, I said, I want to do it myself. Bob, would you like to have someone select your contestants? Thanks, Ralph, but no, I responded. I want to do that, too. After a warm introduction by a CBS staff announcer, I went on stage. As I went out into the studio audience to select my contestants, I tried not to look at Dorothy Jo. She was seated in the audience and leading the applause, laughing at every word I said, and turning to others who had no idea she was my wife, and saying, "Isn't he wonderful?" I chose my contestants, and we did the show just like a live radio show. As many of you will recall, the basic idea of truth or consequences was simple. A contestant was asked a less than erudite question, such as, in the days of the Old West, what did it mean when a gunfighter had notches in his gun handle? The correct answer was termites. For having failed to answer the question, the contestant had to pay the consequences, which would be a hopefully hilarious stunt. The basic idea of the show was simple enough, but the consequences could get complicated as later. After you've done this for a few years, you know when it's going well. And I knew this afternoon had gone well. I got laughs, and the consequences worked. When I came off the stage, Ralph was waiting in the wings, smiling. I could tell he was pleased. That went nicely, he said warmly. Don't do truth or consequences for me. I'll have other shows that you might do. But so far as truth or consequences is concerned, I'll be in touch. This was not what I was hoping to hear. I didn't want to do another show sometime in the future. I wanted to do truth or consequences right now. Sometime in the future might never come. I tried to smile my best smile as I said, "Thank you, Mr. Edwards." I went home worried and frustrated. There seemed to be no end to the number of hoops I would be asked to jump through. Worse yet, Ralph called a few days later and informed me that what we both thought was a successful audition was not really a television audition at all, since no one had actually seen me on camera. He asked if I would come down to the old El Capitan Theater in Hollywood, where they were producing the Tennessee Ernie Ford show, so they could check out my on-camera appearance during a break. I had no idea who they were, but they held my future in their hands. Joe Lattis was one of the pioneering directors in the early days of television, and he was doing Tennessee Ernie's show. As soon as I arrived, they hustled me into makeup and put me in front of a camera to say a few lines with Joe during breaks in the Tennessee Ernie Ford show rehearsal. Ralph was in the booth with a bunch of other people, and they were all looking intently at me. I was about to find out whether I had a face made for radio. Finally, Ralph came out of the booth and said the dreaded words, "I'll be in touch." I went home despondent. Dorothy Jo commiserated and tried to console me. I began to wonder if "I'll be in touch" was one of those Hollywood phrases that was a euphemism for something more ominous. Can't these people make up the... A few days later, I got the answer. On December 21st, 1956, at exactly 5 minutes past noon, Ralph Edwards called me and told me I was to be the host of Truth or Consequences. This was, and is, and always will be, the most important telephone call of my professional career. It changed my whole life. That first national show paved the way for the wonderful half-century I had on television. At the time, I certainly did not feel like an overnight success, especially after the ordeal of the last few weeks. But that was the way many in the industry saw it. Moreover, when I tell that story, some people shrug and say, if Ralph Edwards hadn't called, someone else would have. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I would have spent my entire life going to Ventura and Oxnard doing the Southern California Edison shows. But Ralph did call, and I signed a contract shortly thereafter. Ralph made all the difference in my life. 10 days later, we went on the air with our first show. It was New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1956. I will always be grateful to Ralph for his support and kind words on that show. After reminding the audience that Truth or Consequences was the granddaddy of audience participation shows, he graciously introduced me as a young man with one of the brightest futures in television. And over the years, he did his best to make that prediction come true. savings bond promotion. With Ralph's glowing introduction of me and the excitement of our special guest, former heavyweight champion Jack Dempsey, we got the show off to a rousing start, and the contestants did the rest. But that phone call was everything to me. It came after a long string of I'll be in touch promises. But it was also the beginning of a bond with Ralph Edwards that lasted a lifetime. He became not only my champion, but my mentor and my dear friend. He and his wife, Barbara, became close with Dorothy Joe and me, and really took us under their wing. Every year on December 21st, Ralph and I had lunch together, and at 5 minutes after noon, we drank a toast to our long and enduring friendship. Ralph passed away in 2005, but on that date, at that time, I always paused to thank him. And now, I'm going to throw it right over to the architect of the Priceless Game Recap team, Mr. Morgan, to read the first chapter of this very well detailed and well-expressed book called Priceless Memories. The first chapter, Truth or Consequences, my first national show. Take it away, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you very much, and well done reading the preface. All right. Okay. Chapter 1. Truth or Consequences, my first national show.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes.
Good, you're here. I was worried for a moment.
Had to take a drink of water first before I could start reading.
You're muted in Discord, Mr. Morgan.
Oh. Oh, sorry about that. I had to mute myself out of respect for the Oregon representative reading the preface. All right. Now, Chapter 1, Truth or Consequences, my first national show. The Truth or Consequences job that Ralph Edwards gave me was definitely my big break, and it was the foundation of all the wonderful things that came later. Was I lucky? Yes. After all, I had been doing radio shows for years, but I had no television experience. Did I work hard to make the most of the opportunity that Ralph gave me? You bet I did. And I benefited a great deal from Ralph and the very talented staff involved with that show. I was confident that I could do the job. After all, I had done audience participation for so long, I was comfortable with the show's format. Also, I knew Ralph Edwards had confidence in me. I had respect for his judgment, so I thought to myself, you can do this, Parker. And I went out and did it. However, I didn't make Truth or Consequences. If anything, Truth or Consequences made Bob Barker. At least it made me nationally known and launched my career. It also made me some pretty good money. It's important to remember that the show had already been around for 16 years, 10 on radio and 6 on television, prior to my arrival. Ralph Edwards was brilliant, a broadcasting legend, and he created the show. Jack Bailey, who was famous as host of Queen for a Day, had in fact hosted the show at night for 2 years, just before I got the nod. I was stepping into an ideal position in 4 ways. First, the show had a long, successful track record. Second, I was working with incredible talent. They included not only Ralph, but also producer Ed Bailey, who had worked with Ralph for years. Announcer, associate producer Charlie Lyon, who left his job as NBC's chief editor in Chicago to join Ralph's production company, and the unpredictable Milt Larson, one of our writers, who later went on to start the Magic Castle Club in Hollywood. Third, as I look back on this time period, 1956 and into the 60s, it was the absolute heyday of television. The advertising industry was booming. The country was prospering, and as the national television audience grew, the major networks were in a perfect position to ride the wave of prosperity and viewership. There was an excitement about television, about broadcasting, about advertising, and new products and new technology. We were in Hollywood, the center of entertainment, and this was shaping up to be the golden age of television programming. Finally, Ralph thought that the show played to my strengths. He pointed out that I'd had years of experience ad-libbing and working with audiences. I could choose my own contestants. I could do my own warm-up. He told me that he was sure I would be completely comfortable doing Truth or Consequences. Ralph said, "He or C is a good fit for you, and you are a good fit for the show." All of this was music to my ears. Make no mistake, it was a major break and an extraordinary opportunity for me. I did go on to have a fabulous 18-year run with Truth or Consequences. But when I started, I was hired on a 4-week trial basis. And while Ralph was confidently in my corner, I had no guarantees that I would be retained beyond that initial probationary period. I told you that Dorothy Jo was in the audience for my audition. Well, she was right there laughing it up for me at my early shows too. I could always depend upon Dorothy Jo to help in every way possible. As I have mentioned, my first show was December 31st, 1956. We did the show live back in those days in the NBC studio at the corner of Sunset and Vine. The reason for that 4-week clause in my contract, I learned later, was that out of 11 people voting in the original hiring meeting, I got only one vote. But I got the right one, Ralph Edwards. He told them, "This guy is your man. You give him 4 weeks and see if you don't agree." During that first show, I said to Ralph on air, "Following you and Jack Bailey, I feel like I'm hitting after Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig," Ralph said. Ralph said, "Well, we've got to bring along the Mantles and the DiMaggios." He was very kind. I'll never forget that. I was definitely nervous backstage before the show. My heart was beating so fast that I thought I might have a heart attack before I ever got out there. But on the show itself, I wasn't nervous. The staff and crew did everything possible to make me feel at home, and the show went well. We had Jack Dempsey, the former heavyweight boxing champion, on the first show. He was a real gentleman. Jack was much bigger than I had expected. I had read that he was a relatively small heavyweight, but small was not a word I would associate with him. His hands were huge. When I shook hands with him, it seemed as if his hand covered mine all the way up to the elbow. We also gave away a Studebaker, a sporty 5-seater called the Seahawk. That was a huge prize back then. Years later, I remember we had another boxing champion, Joe Louis, on T or C. This was long after he had been champion and he was retired. He was a very nice fellow, soft-spoken but outgoing, and a good conversationalist. I interviewed him at some length and I asked him, "Who was your toughest opponent?" When he answered the IRS, everyone in the audience knew exactly what he meant. Poor old Joe. They knocked him around a bit. Take a drink of water. The tremendous popularity of Truth or Consequences over the years was a result of the show's humor, the games and practical jokes, and the audience participation. We also had many celebrity guests, but the prizes added to the excitement. Many of the products given away were new additions to the American home. We gave away refrigerators, washers, dryers, and other large home appliances. Even the small gifts like coffee percolators were new products that advertisers, sponsors, and consumers were all excited about. During my first 7 years on T or C, we would sometimes tape at the El Capitan Theater. We were back and forth between there and the studio at Sunset and Vine. Talk about landmark locations, Sunset and Vine and the El Capitan Theater. I'll never forget doing the show live at the El Capitan Theater at 8 a.m. Can you imagine coming to Truth or Consequences at 8 a.m.? Remarkably, we were packed every day. We filled the place. On the marquee it said, "Free donuts and Bob Barker." When I finished my 4-week probation and they hired me on long term, I had the sign changed to Bob Barker and free donuts. I told them, I'm not going to be billed under the donuts any longer. Doing Truth or Consequences at the El Capitan Theater was no problem whatsoever. As I wrote earlier, the Tennessee Ernie Ford show was taping there regularly, so it was well lighted for television and the sound system was excellent. We just moved our regular set to the El Capitan stage, and with our regular technicians and crew, we were ready to get it on. But we were happiest in Studio D at the NBC studios at Sunset and Vine. At that time, I think Studio D was the best studio in Hollywood for audience participation. The seats were banked up from stage level so every person in the audience could see everything that happened on stage perfectly. Folks in the first few rows were at risk when we started throwing the lemon meringue pies for which TRC was famous. And access to the audience from the stage was completely unimpeded. There wasn't even a step. The aisle began right at stage level, which was very convenient when we did a consequence that required me to go into the audience. If I sounded as if I was fond of Studio D, I assure you that I was. So much so, in fact, that when the old NBC studio was demolished, Charlie Lyons saved the Studio D flashing red on the air sign as a gift for me, and I hung it over the bar in my home. When we taped in Studio D, we could do things out on the street too. We used hidden cameras to play jokes on people walking by the studio. We were surrounded by traffic and tourists. We had a big sign outside that said, "Truth or Consequences." And many tourists decided on the spot to come in and watch the show. But when the network decided that we were going to color from black and white, they moved us to the new studios in Burbank. We really didn't have a lot of firsts on TRC. We were one of the first shows to broadcast in color, and we were one of the first shows to tape in Burbank. All shows would tape occasionally, but we were the first national television show to tape on a regular schedule. Later on, we were the first show to produce directly for syndication with the Metro Media Television Network. Before that time, all of the shows in syndication had been reruns. Although it is difficult to imagine now, in 1964, the NBC studio in Burbank was literally in the middle of a field. We hated it. We lost all of the foot traffic we had in Hollywood, so there were no walk-ins. And worse yet, you couldn't play jokes on people walking by, because nobody walked by. If you wanted to come to the show, you had to take the bus or drive to Burbank. Tourists had trouble even finding Burbank. On a happier note, one of the best aspects of Truth or Consequences was that it was always fresh. We did 3 consequences a day, and each one was different and self-contained. We produced 5 shows a week. I've always said I was lucky to get the Truth or Consequences job early in my career because I learned so much doing it, and it prepared me so well for other things I did in broadcasting. Each consequence was like a drama. You start with a question, reveal the consequence, carefully build toward the climax, and then pay it off with a hilarious finish. Every consequence was a learning experience, particularly during my first few years on the show. I believe many people never get the opportunity to demonstrate their sense of humor. One of the great parts of my job as host was to bring out this humor in people and to enjoy it. That was one of the rewards of my work, seeing people having fun and laughing uproariously, not just at others, but at themselves. Choosing contestants was like casting a play or a movie. I knew what the act or stunt required, and I tried to find the best person in the audience to play the role. I went through the audience and asked who wanted to play Truth or Consequences. Practically all of the people in the audience raised their hands. Then I picked one and asked him or her to stand up. When you stand up, you're no longer part of the audience. You're an individual now, and all eyes are on you. I wanted to see how potential contestants were going to react and how the audience was going to react to them. Some people have this wonderful thing. As soon as they stand up, everybody loves them. I'd say, "What's your name?" And he'd just say, "Fred Jones." And right away, people loved him. Audiences react that way to certain people. I selected contestants very carefully based on the potential contestants' reactions, the audience's reactions, and my knowledge of what the consequence involved. For example, I might choose a younger man rather than an older man because the consequence involved something physical. Many acts required couples, so I looked for married folks who were there together. Other times, I might look for older women or men, or someone middle-aged. And of course, with children on from time to time. On T or C, I almost always worked with contestants who were not pre-selected or coached. Almost all of the contestants were picked by me, right out of the studio audience. And I preferred it that way. I preferred to work with unrehearsed people right out of the audience because that spontaneity is so vital. I think that spontaneous reaction is a major part of the success of both Truth or Consequences and The Price is Right. So many memorable comic moments are unscripted. In fact, those are the best kind. The contestants didn't have a week to worry about being on television. They hadn't had their hair done or selected their best dress. They weren't even made up. They had their normal street makeup on, if they were women. And there they were, suddenly on television, just like the people at home who were watching them and identifying with them. I noted that I almost always worked with contestants who were not pre-selected because at times we used what we called setup contestants. These might be a husband who helped us to play a joke on his wife or a woman who would help us play a joke on her club, that sort of thing. Back then, it was all about creating spontaneous entertainment with ordinary people. I listened to the successful hosts on radio. Tom Brennerman used to do a show called Breakfast in Hollywood on Vine Street in a little restaurant. He'd take a microphone and just go from table to table, talking with the people eating there. If one group of people was lively or entertaining, he'd stay with them. If not, he'd move on to the next table. It was fun and interesting. You could never sell a show like that today. It requires experience to do pure audience participation, and today there is almost no place where you can get that experience. Years ago, almost every radio station, large or small, originated at least a few shows that required the host to talk with ordinary people. That is no longer true, so young people have no place to develop their skills. No matter how much natural talent you have for audience participation, there is no substitute for experience. Ralph and I grew up in a different world. Ralph was a master host, one of the very best, and he knew that imitation might be the highest form of flattery, but imitation was not the way to go if you were hosting a television show. Before I did Truth or Consequences for the first time, Ralph told me, "Bob, you are the star of this show now. Go out there and do it your way. Don't imitate me or anyone else. Do it Bob Barker's way." I think Ralph's advice to me was right on. I believe in it so much that I have repeated it to every young host who has ever asked me for advice. Do it your way. Don't forget that Frank Sinatra even put it to music. In the early days of Truth or Consequences, someone told me, "You've got to remember you're playing to a lady who's in front of an ironing board. Somewhere in the room with her is a baby crying. With one hand she's trying to iron, and the other hand she has on the TV dial. You have to capture her attention and entertain her, or she's going to turn that dial." That's what you always have to remember. When you are doing the show, you are talking to that person at home. If you ignore that fact, you're in trouble. On Truth or Consequences, we had a camera for me to speak directly to the home audience. Every once in a while, when I was talking to a contestant, I turned to look directly into that camera and spoke to the audience at home. That was important. Of course, you want the studio audience to be a part of it from the moment the show begins to the moment it ends. You want to keep them completely involved. Just gather them in and cradle them. But you never want to forget the fact that the person at home is watching. Excuse me. On Truth, I always made sure that nobody answered the question correctly. I had chosen the contestants because they were just right for the consequences, and I didn't want to lose them. I made certain that the questions and answers were so comically crazy that there was almost no chance of a correct answer. For example, question: what did one eye say to the other eye? Answer: just between us, something smells. Question: which side of a duck has the most feathers? Answer: the outside. Question: what do snakes do after they have a fight? They hiss and make up. I like that one. If someone did answer a question, I would discover that it was a two-part question. Only once in all of the years that I hosted TRC did a contestant answer the second part of a question. Of course, I immediately made that one a three-part question. No one ever got away. The production team on Truth or Consequences was like a well-oiled machine, and we had fun doing the show. The writers were fantastic. Some of the stunts and games they came up with were amazing. One of the most popular acts was the reunions. One moment the audience was howling at one of the consequences, and the next moment we had one of these reunions with a soldier and his mother, or long lost brother, or someone like that. Frequently, everyone, sometimes including the production staff, was in tears. One reunion I will never forget. We had these two Italian sisters on the show who had not seen each other for 30 years. One lived in California in the San Fernando Valley, and the other one still lived in Italy. We had the sister from Italy flown in, and we were going to surprise the sister, who lived in the valley. I got the sister who lived here in California on the stage, and when her Italian sister walked out from the wings, it was too much for her. Her mouth dropped open and she fainted dead away. Out cold. It was toward the end of the show and we couldn't revive her. I had to sign off with 2 or 3 members of the staff still over her trying to wake her up. We decided to have the sisters back the next day so we could show our audience that the victim of the reunion had recovered. So the next day, I opened the show standing on stage with the sister from the valley, the one who fainted, and I tell the audience, "You remember yesterday? Well, see, she's okay. We revived her and everything is fine. Let's bring out her sister again." And when the sister from Italy walks on stage, boom! The valley sister faints again. This time we just hauled her off. No more explanations. The reunions were such a popular feature of the show that they spawned This Is Your Life, which ran on NBC for 8 years. Charlie Lyon, an associate producer as well as our announcer, orchestrated all the reunions. His brother was a diplomat in the State Department, and I could see why. Charlie had the same genes. He was a perfect gentleman. We called him the Rembrandt of reunions because he arranged so many of them so well. My wife, Dorothy Jo, was a frequent and popular visitor to the show. Sometimes her appearance was my idea. More often the writers would suggest it. Whenever they were in a dry spell and it was getting down to the time they had to come up with something, they'd say, "Let's do a Dorothy Jo act." I'd say, "Fine," and we'd bring her back to save the day. I will never forget our first Dorothy Jo consequence. It set the pace for all of those that followed. I selected 2 ladies from the studio audience whose assignment would be to question 3 women and choose the one who was Mrs. Bob Barker. After sending these 2 ladies backstage, I chose 2 more ladies from the studio audience who would join Dorothy Jo and claim to be my wife. For these roles, I selected 2 ladies who impressed me as being clever, witty, and able to think fast in an ad-lib situation. One of these phony wives from the audience proved to be fast on her feet beyond my wildest expectations, responding to questions during the playing of the game. She accused me of continually complaining about her cooking, spending every free moment on the golf course, and drinking so many martinis that I couldn't carry on a conversation after 8:30 in the evening. Of course, the audience loved every word of it. The studio rocked with laughter, but as usual, Dorothy Jo had the last laugh. She looked up at me and sweetly said, "Honey, this lady has you pegged right down the line." The 2 interrogators correctly chose Dorothy Jo as Mrs. Bob Barker. My mother was on Truth or Consequences occasionally. In fact, the producers even played a prank on me with my mother. When my mother was still living in Missouri, they had her flown out here to surprise me. I had selected a lady from the audience and I expected her to be brought around on a turntable. But when the turntable came around, there was my own mother smiling at me. I was blown away, totally surprised. I behaved like a typical contestant. I turned my back on the camera and did everything wrong. I'll never forget it. They had really surprised me. We even had my basset hound on the show. Early in my career, I had been mistakenly called Mr. Baker so many times that I named my pet basset hound Mr. Baker. He would come on the show just to say hello, and the audience loved him. Still to this day, I'll be in a pet store or somewhere like that, and someone will say, "Oh, I used to watch you on Truth or Consequences, and I loved your dog." That's the lasting impression animals make. We also did a lot of outdoor stunts and jokes on the show. There was an office building next to the NBC studio at Sunset and Vine. It was about stories, I guess. One day we hung a piano up there, coming out of the third floor window on a cable. Then we had one of our guys on the street, holding a rope. We fixed it so it appeared he was holding up the piano by holding the rope, but of course he wasn't. A young man came walking down Vine, and our man called out to him, asking him to help him for just one more minute. Our man says, "Please, sir, I'm holding that piano up there, and it's very expensive. Would you please just hold it for one moment while I go into the building for my helper? But for goodness sake, don't drop it. Don't leave. Pull that piano." The pedestrian said, "Sure." So he's holding the rope, and then there's a little jerk on the rope, and the piano kind of moves. And all of a sudden, the whole thing breaks off, and the piano comes crashing down to the street. The fellow dropped the rope and took off running up Vine Street as fast as he could go. I'm calling out on the speaker to him, "Hey, it's Bob Barker. You're on Truth or Consequences." But he just kept running and running. We never caught him or located him later, so we couldn't give him his prize. More's the pity, but the audience loved it. Wow. We did another stunt outside Grauman's Chinese Theater that played splendidly. We had a small truck parked in front of the theater, in the back of which was a cage filled with straw and a sizable chimpanzee. Only it wasn't a chimpanzee. It was actually a fellow named Janos Prohaska, and he could convince you that you were with a chimp when he was in costume. He was amazing. Anyway, he's in the cage, and Milt Larson, one of our writers, was up there on the back of the truck. He held the cage door closed and waited for the right-looking guy to come by. Someone perfect for the joke. Here came a man, a big, broad-shouldered fellow, who we found out later had played professional football for the Los Angeles Dons. Milt says to the guy, "Excuse me, sir, would you help me for a moment? I have my chimpanzee in here, and this lock isn't working properly. I have to go into the theater to get my tools. Would you just hold the door shut for me for a couple of moments?" The man says yes, he'd be happy to. So the former football player gets up there and holds the cage door, and Milt says thank you and goes into the theater. There used to be a restaurant next to Grauman's, and that's where I was lying down beside our hidden camera. The cameraman and I are watching this gag unfold. We had hidden microphones all over the place. The chimp appeared to be over in a corner, asleep. But after Milt goes into the theater, the chimp wakes up and starts throwing a little straw around the cage. Now this big viral man holding the cage door starts talking baby talk to the chimp. "That's all right, baby. Daddy will be right back. Just relax, baby. It's all right." And the chimp moves around a little more and moves toward the door. The baby talk continues. "It's all right, baby. Back up, baby. Get back, baby. Daddy will be right back." He's still baby talking to the chimp when all of a sudden, the chimp grabs the cage door and flings it open. Now the guy has dropped the baby talk and he's yelling, "Back, you son of a bleep! Back, you bleep! Down!" And the chimp keeps after him. And now the man runs into the theater with the chimp chasing him, and he's yelling the whole time, "Leave me alone, you bleep! Down! Back, you son of a bleep! Don't touch me! Bleep this and bleep that, and you bleepedly bleep bleep!" So many bleeps. I was laughing so hard I couldn't even get up off the floor. We called it our bleep consequence. We played it on the air just like it happened, with all of the bleeps. So Milt comes out and tells him it's all right. It's not really a chimp. It's Janos Prohaska pretending to be a chimp. And I'm still laughing on the floor, but I finally crawl out of the hiding spot and go up to this fellow who's not in a good mood, said, "I'm Bob Barker and you are on Truth or Consequences." He says, "Yes, I know who you are." I know, right? And then I tell him what fun the stunt has been and how we have a great prize for him. I tell him we have a fancy new billiards table for him. He looks right at me and says, "What the bleep am I going to do with that?" It was the perfect end to the bleep consequence. On another show, we invited a bunch of kids who played in Little League baseball to be in the audience. They were all 9 or 10-year-old boys. Then we got 2 girls, maybe they were 14 or 15. One girl was a professional softball pitcher. She could throw a softball like lightning. And the other girl, her sister, who was also a professional, was her catcher. We planted these girls in the audience, but not together, and pretended to the boys that we just picked them out randomly from the audience. I said something like, "How about you, young lady? Would you like to play?" "Yes, come on." I picked a few of the boys from the Little League group and said, "Let's have a game." I told them, "We're going to play softball. You 3 guys are going to hit, and you, young lady, you be the catcher. And you, would you be the pitcher, please?" She goes all the way across the stage, and the boys are licking their chops, saying, "Oh, this is going to be fun." I put a particularly eager young fellow up to hit, and this professional pitcher throws that ball so fast past him, he doesn't twitch a muscle. "Why didn't you swing at it?" I asked. He says, "That's a phony ball." The audience roared with laughter. "That's not a phony ball," I said, and I took it from the catcher. "Look at this. That's not a phony ball." "Well then, she's got a phony arm," he said, and the audience howled even louder. This is getting good. Things didn't always go as planned on Truth or Consequences. That was part of the fun of the show. We had all kinds of things go wrong, but I just made the best of it, and the show rolled on. We had props that didn't work. We had camera or microphone malfunctions. Sometimes a guest would react unexpectedly, but even when acts didn't come off smoothly, there was always humor in them, and the audience seemed to love it. We'd have things that would fail miserably, but when they did, frequently I could make it amusing. Besides, people loved to see me standing there with egg on my face. There were so many details involved with reunions that they occasionally went awry. For one, we had a deserving young Marine flown home from Korea to surprise his wife. One of his wife's friends arranged to have her sitting on a bench in front of our studio at Sunset and Vine. And on cue from us, a city bus, which we rented for the day, was supposed to pull up in front of the bench, and the Marine was going to step off the bus and take his wife into his arms. I described exactly what we had planned to our studio audience and viewers. I emphasized what a fine record the Marine had and how courageous the young wife had been during the months that she and the children had anxiously awaited his return. I built to the boiling point the anticipation for that glorious moment when husband and wife would be reunited. And then I went into a commercial. After the commercial, I did a quick review to make sure that every viewer realized how fortunate he or she was to share this moment with this loving husband and wife. Then, at the exact time to the second that we had agreed for the bus to arrive on the scene, I cut to our outside camera. The Marine and his wife were sitting on the bus stop bench chatting. The bus had arrived during the commercial. I looked into the camera and said, "It must have been a great reunion. I wish we could have seen it." Sometime later, after many flawless successes, another reunion went sour. This one was to be more dramatic than even the soap opera fair. This time, we were reuniting a fine young sailor and his dear old mother. The sailor's sister brought their mother to the NBC studio in Burbank. The mother thought that they were to be part of a group touring the facility. The sister knew that the group consisted of folks I took out of our T&C audience to help our little caper, for which, of course, each would receive a prize. This was the plan. As the tour group arrived on stage, every light in the studio was to go out except for one powerful spotlight casting a pool of light directly on center stage. As you might have guessed, on cue, the sailor was to step into the pool of light. The mother would rush to her beloved son, the sister would join them, and familial happiness would reign. Oh, thank you. But all of this was not to be the case. We have all had really bad experiences with the best laid plans, haven't we? As usual, I did my breathless build-up for the momentous moment. I would like to think that I had the folks in our studio on the edges of their seats. Folks at home too, if they were seated when I received the signal that the tour group was stepping through the door. I asked the lighting man to douse the lights. He more than cooperated. He shut down every light in the place, including the all-important spotlight. The entire studio was in total darkness, and it stayed that way for about 2 minutes, during which I had to keep talking in a desperate effort to keep viewers from thinking NBC had gone off the air, and to keep them from changing channels. What did I say? I have no idea. But I did get a letter from a lady who wrote, "Bob, you do your best work in the dark." By the way, eventually we got the sailor and his mother together, and everyone lived happily ever after. There's 2 more pages, folks. There were many memorable moments on Truth or Consequences. I have a treasure chest of memories of all the fun we had doing that show. Of course, it was special to meet all the celebrity guests we had. But the average person guests, the non-celebrities, were just as memorable. Everyone knows I'm an animal lover, and I will tell you about another reunion featuring a boy and his dog that touched me as deeply as any reunion we ever did. We heard about a sailor who was stationed in Florida who had received orders to come out here to one of the naval bases around Los Angeles. He was married and had a little son, about 9 or 10 years old. The son had a basset hound, but he didn't have the money to move the dog. So they left the dog with a friend in Florida, and they came out to California. The boy got a job delivering papers so he could save up enough money to get his dog out here. But it was going slowly. We heard about this and, of course, had the dog flown out here. And somehow we arranged to get the boy to the show and have him end up talking with me in the hallway, where we had a hidden camera and a hidden microphone. The boy didn't know we were on the air. During our conversation, he mentioned his dog. He said he was working to save money and bring him out here. I said, "You really love that dog, don't you?" And he said, "Oh, yes, I do." The dog's name was Bo. At that moment, one of our people from the show comes down the hallway, and he's leading Bo on a leash. The boy looks up at the dog and says, "That looks like Bo." And I said, "That is Bo." And he just bolted for the dog. He hugged him and kissed him and hugged him some more. It was a precious moment. I was so touched I could hardly speak. I had tears in my eyes, and I wasn't the only one. The cameramen were all crying, and later I mentioned it to the director, and he said, "Not only you, but the agency reps in the booth had tears in their eyes, and that doesn't happen often. That is one of the most touching moments we have ever had. We ever had." I had 35 great years on The Price is Right, but Truth or Consequences will always hold a special place in my heart for many reasons. It was my first national television job. I had the opportunity to work with one of my heroes, Ralph Edwards, and Dorothy Jo and I began to enjoy more financial security. We didn't change our lifestyle much, but the opportunity to do the show was a fulfillment of a dream we had had. It was also a glorious pioneering time in television, and so much of the country was energized and united by television. The whole entertainment industry was thriving. We were living in Hollywood, working in Hollywood, and I was having fun doing what I loved to do. Truth or Consequences was a fun-filled, richly rewarding 18-year ride for me. I'll always cherish those early years. I was delighted to have Ralph's son, Gary Edwards, who was a little boy when I went to work for his father, in the front row 5 decades later, cheering me on as I taped my last The Price is Right on June 6, 2007. That's chapter 1.
And I bet the rest of the book is, priceless memories indeed.
It
That was the, I'll have to, I'll have to see, on YouTube a few Truth or Consequences steps.
Yep.
Maybe even 4 episodes.
Oh yeah. I want to have when I get some opinion from the second in command and the New Jersey team member here um, on Bob's beginnings from Truth or Consequences. What do you think of the experience Bob had hosting this show?
Definitely, everybody has to start somewhere,
Absolutely.
so, yeah, Bob was just in the right place at the right time, that Ralph Edwards got to hear his radio show, and that's what propelled him, what wanted to recruit big Ralph, wanted to recruit Bob into, hosting Truth or Consequences, and they say history has a habit of repeating itself, and the same thing kind of happened when Price is Right was being revived in 1972, because Mark Goodson had seen Bob's work on Truth and Consequences and felt he would be a good fit for Price is Right. And you saw what happened there.
Mark saw Bob as the man.
Yeah. And, yeah, it also helped that, that Bob, that Truth or well, we just learned, Truth or Consequences was not his first show, but he had been already a vocal veteran of audience participation doing, the Bob Barker show. So that was, so for that, yeah, so Bob, he wasn't the world's greatest master of ceremonies for nothing. He loved his audiences. They loved him back. He wanted to, always doing one-on-ones with the contestants, unlike other, not just game show hosts, but game shows.
It was in his DNA.
That kind of, those were kind of
Sure.
While you guys were reading the preface and in chapter 1 of the book, something very interesting dawned on me.
And what's that, second in command?
He got his start into the consequences with Ralph Everett in 1986, which means Bob turned 33 years old then. And we know that number very well because Studio 33 was where Price is Right was filmed and became known as the Bob Barker Studio.
Yes.
That is interesting.
Yeah, the number 33 definitely has significance for The Price is Right, doesn't it? Yeah, and the starting age of 33 with Truth or Consequences.
Yeah, in the same studio that the Joe Burnett show was filmed. And more to the point, this is more of a coincidence than anything. 1956 was also an interesting year for Price is Right because that's when the original version started with Bill Cohen.
Ah.
Oh yeah. It's just one of those things.
Yeah. All right. Next on our, if the next part of our tribute will be some very famous clips of Bob's career, and why don't we start off with September 4th, 1972, when Bob first hosted The Price is Right. Back then, it was only a half hour long, and it was known as The New Price is Right. So,
Okay.
let me just put this on full screen, and I will present to you the introduction of Bob's first show from 9/4/1972. And while this loads, I'll also mention that um, some members of the pricing game recap team have posted clips on the Price is Right recap server that I created, and the second in command helped on assisting with his expertise on Discord. So we'll present more clips as this tribute goes on. All right, now here, let's see. Cooperate with me. Here's how Price is Right began for Bob in 1972. Please forgive the technical difficulties here. But as they say in the entertainment business, please stand by. Here we go. Okay. So that's how Bob's start happened on The Price is Right back on September 4th, 1972. Okay. All right. We'll go on to the next clip. All right, I'm going to share now with you a clip from Match Game, where Bob was a panelist. He started off as a panelist when the show started in 1973. But in this clip, Match Game used the Star Wheel. This was around late 1978 into the end of Match Game's syndication in 1982. But let's just say in this clip, Bob was really not too fond of his name being landed on the Star Wheel. In fact, he made his displeasure very vocal. And this clip was posted by my fellow New Jerseyan. So this one is it's called Yep, Bob Barker cursing on Match Game. So all right, we're going to get to the part with the Star Wheel. So
We started the Olympian Smash last time you were here. You won with $500. That means at least you'll be playing for us 10 times that amount, or $5,000. But we are indeed going to ask you to spin the Star Wheel. And if you get a lucky spin out of that wheel, you'll double it and play for $10,000. So if you step up there, we'll all root for a double. For you, Marla, give it a good roll there. There it is.
Now, if you couldn't quite tell what Bob was saying, he was saying, "Oh shit," when his name was coming close on the Star Wheel, and he was glad that it stopped short when Deborah Lee Scott's name was landed. So apparently, before Bob had his famous fight in Happy Gilmore, he did say a curse word. Case in point, this clip. That was pretty funny, I will say.
It was, yeah. It really did have. Yeah, it was a real stitch.
Now, I am going to share a clip that Benjamin Mason from New Brunswick, Canada, posted on the video library, and he and I have done retro recaps in the past. Here we're going to watch an epic spin-off. How epic was it? We'll see you'll see in this clip. And for this one, I'm going to put it in theater mode.
Spin that wheel. You are trying to beat 65 cents. What'd you say? What did you say? One that's comfortable for you. That's fine. That's fine. That is a splendid spin. You are trying to beat 65 cents, and you may have tied it. You did. Now, you can spin again and try to beat it, or you can have a spin-off. Each of you will have one spin. Spin off. Right over here, Maureen. Alana, spin that wheel. I beg your pardon? Yes, you still get $1,000 if it lands on $1. You sure do. Yes, you do. She didn't want to spin if it wasn't going to be profitable. No, you didn't get it all. You got 55 cents. Back you go. All right, it's your spin, Maureen. You're trying to beat 55 cents. There she goes. Oh, that's fine. Oh, that was a good spin. You're trying to beat 55 cents, and we another tie here. Maureen, when you get back over here. When you get back over here, spin that wheel, Kuana. Now, Kuana, what happens if you get $1 this time? No, not this time. Yes, you do. I'm just teasing. Oh, 20 cents. Now, Maureen, you're trying to beat 20 cents. Will she get 55 cents again? If she does, she's a winner. She's trying to beat 20 cents. Oh, no. No! You feel there at home. I am bored myself. Get over here and spin that again, Maureen. I'll tell you what.
Oh.
This time, no $1,000. I'm sick of this. No, you still get $1,000. What is a record for ties? Is that tied it or was that it? That is a new record. They've established a record for ties. Okay, 80 cents. They tied 3 times.
Gee, I wonder what happened here. You gotta be kidding me. Wow. Oh my gosh. That's what happens when you spin the wheel so much.
All right. Now, Kuana has it all worked out. Come over here. Come over here. I want to hear what you said. What did you say?
I said you just give us both $1,000.
Yeah. Spin that wheel.
Kuana really wanted $1,000.
All-time record.
I understand,
They're going to have to
but you have to, you know.
Priceless today. They're not gonna have time.
A nickel.
Well, don't moan. She'll get a nickel. All right, there you go. Now, just watch the nickel. That's all I'm worried about. You win with 15 cents. We're going to get the show. We'll be back after this.
Wow. 4 ties on the wheel. That truly was an epic spin-off now, wasn't it? But you know, Benjamin also shared another epic spin-off and I will have that next. And now, here's what I'm going to do. After I open the link, I'm going to get me another bottle of water, and then we'll see how this epic spin-off played out. Yeah, I hear there's an echo somewhere. So I will be right back. All right, I'm back, and now on to the next epic spin-off. We'll do full screen. Oh. Oop. My finger slipped, but apologies there. All right, I'm gonna do full screen. There we go. Oh. Annie did a wheelie, as it's known as on The Price is Right, when someone spins the wheel and falls down on the floor. Bob and Jeff were on standby in case another wheelie happened, and it did not. So this clip fast forward to Jeff and his other contestant each spun 30 cents. Well, yeah. $0.15. The men tied at 15 cents. Yeah, 60 cents. Edgar finally broke the spell. Okay. Yes, Price is Right has definitely had its share of epic spin-offs with Bob, huh, fellas? Okay, let's see what clip I will play next. Let's see. All right, going back to match game clip that my fellow New Jerseyan shared. From Match Game 75, Bob Barker grovels to the audience. What was Bob groveling about? Well, we'll see. It's only a minute 30 seconds, this clip, so it's a short clip.
Tiny Tom Thumb said, "The tiny people's world champion rodeo star. I may be a little from Oyster Bulls, but I'm the best in the world at riding a bucking blank. Flea. Flea. He was small, wasn't he? Man, she said Flea. I didn't know he was that small. How small was his tiny Tom Thumb?" Before I give my answer here, Gene, I would like to establish some rapport with this audience. The last audience we had was filled with Art Linkletter fans. My answers were receiving hisses and boos. Admittedly, I made no matches, or very few matches, but I would like to start off anew with you. Okay? I said Flea.
Aha! Bob matched.
It just takes a couple of days to learn the game. That's all. All right. One more time here. Tiny Tom says, "I'm the tiny people's world champion rodeo star. I may be too little for horses or bulls, but I'm the best in the world at riding a bucking slant." I think he would kill a flea, though. Yeah, really. He was 9 inches tall. He was 9 inches tall. But I won't do what Mr. Barger did, which was grow. On the other hand, I've seen you do it to your country. My mom was very nice to some of the American soldiers. Because you can't.
Okay. All right. That was a good clip you did, my friend. All right. Okay, here's another one that my fellow New Jerseyan posted. This one is called Stupid Perfect Bid. This is something, well, this is a kind of a perfect bid that doesn't happen very often on The Price is Right, but this was from 2007. You'll see why this is called Stupid Perfect Bid. Closed captioning on this. Now let's just review these bids here. We have 1,200, 1,000, 1,300, 999. Now, if Jose was smart, he could have bid 1,301, and he still could have got possibly a perfect bid for that. But here he bid $1 less than Kyle. Yeah. See how Bob builds it up? Bob was a professional at that. How about that? Jose bid $1 under Kyle and with $9.99, and it paid off. Now, what will be the next clip? All right. All right. Well, on Price is Right, there's always good days and bad days. Well, this next clip is about the latter. A very painful double overbid. How painful? Let's watch. Having some technical difficulty here. All right. I'm going to play this clip from the beginning. Let's... Oh, over by $100. Okay, the next clip I will post, I'll share, comes from a $1 Million Spectacular. Yeah, those are fun when Bob posted those. Now here you'll see the end results of the end results of the showcase, and then you'll see a $1 Million spin take place. Hillary went over by $120. That's right. Randy Sherwood, former Barker's Beauty, pulls out the name. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Benjamin Mason posted that clip. All right. This next clip I will play will involve history being made in 10 chances. When this was the very first contestant who won all 3 prizes in just 1 chance for each. Well, check it out. Give my arm a rest. Yes. We will resume from the contestant winning his way up on stage.
Contestant winning his way up on stage. Prizes lie over here. A digital scale and a brass and glass desk.
Oop. There we go. Hmm. You nailed it on that first one. Now, this was back in 1984, so 4-digit price cars were more common. Look at that. Right. Oh. Just before I continue on with any more clips. Oh, all right. Okay. I will post, share two more clips. And then we'll, we'll have to conclude our tribute to Bob. So two more clips. So these two I decided to save the best for last. So, okay, first up, the day when the Bob Barker studio, this was after the 5,000th show back in April 1998. After that day, there was a plaque was up that that honored that name at Studio 33. So I will play that part right now.
As many of you know, yesterday our 5,000th show was on the air. Lucy Johnson, who is Senior Vice President of Daytime and Children's Programming here at CBS, was on the show and announced that in the future, Studio 33, in which we've done all 5,000 of our shows, will be known as Bob Barker Studio. Thank you very much. And after the show, CBS had a dedication ceremony and placed a plaque on the wall out at the entrance of our studio. And we thought that as loyal friends of The Price is Right, you'd like to see that plaque. And here it is. Read the plaque for us, please. All right, it says Bob Barker Studio, March 11th, 1998, 5,000th episode. CBS dedicated Studio 33 to Bob Barker, Mark Woodson Productions, staff, cast, and crew of The Price is Right, in acknowledgement of their continuing excellence in daytime programming. Congratulations. Associated with Price is Right are most grateful to Lucy Johnson and all our friends at CBS. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right. I'm going to save this last clip here. I'm going to save the best for last. It is the best fight in cinema history, folks. Bob Barker in Happy Gilmore. Enjoy.
It's The Price is Right, Andy. Sorry. It happens. Let's play some golf. Jackass. The club went further than the ball. What the hell was that all? Just, it's rainy and the guy in it just slipped. You're gonna need a blanket and suntan lotion, because Will not make this putt, jackass! Nice shooting, soldier! All right, Happy. Nice and easy. That was not nice and easy. That guy's driving me crazy. You know what's driving me crazy? You not getting the ball. Push me, Bob. Now's not the time. Jackass! This guy sucks. We haven't seen Happy Gilmore play this badly since his first day on the tour. He and Bob Barker are now dead last. I can't believe you're a professional golfer. I think you should be working at the snack bar. Relax, Bob. There is no way that you could have been as bad at hockey as you are at golf. All right, let's go.
Ooh.
You like that, old man? You want a piece of me? I don't want a piece of you. I want the whole thing. Now you're gonna get it, Bobby. The price is wrong, bitch. I think you've had enough. No? Now you've had enough, bitch.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Bob. All right. Well, that was a lot of fun. Sharing those clips. So, if I may have the second in command unmute himself, as it's getting close to ending our tribute. So Bob, when Bob passed away, it was reported that it was of natural causes, but my my fellow New Jerseyan reported, brought to my attention that according to TMZ, Bob actually had Alzheimer's. Yeah, Bob had been dealing with Alzheimer's as it. Well, now, I know we all wanted Bob to make it to 100 years old on December 12th. And the media had planned on doing a 100th birthday celebration for Bob if he had made it. I have to say, as one of as you know, as fans of his, that weekend when Bob passed away, it was this was a death that was hard to process. I mean, when you guys heard the news, I mean, how'd you take it? I mean, I can hear you. Yes.
I hear you, but I can
Yeah.
hear Morgan.
I'm not muted as far as I know. How about now?
I put on the stream just in case. On YouTube.
Wait, let me just. I'll be right back, guys.
I can already hear you, but there's like a 5 second delay.
All right.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, that's better. So yeah.
In other words, my whole world stopped for a moment.
To the second in command, how did you react when you heard Bob died?
I was actually with a friend, just going on a little adventure, and we were actually in a record store because he's a record collector and all that. Then my Discord on my phone started going off. I read the first one, and then another one came in on another server I'm in, and then I was like, well, now it's free. Because I just, it was something, we were all kind of fearing.
Yeah.
It happened sooner or later, but it was just like, well, here it is. Yeah.
And to my New Jerseyan. Yeah, it was very tough.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, I popped up in my news feed, and and for a moment, my world stopped, as I said just a moment ago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Same with me. I'm fortunate enough that I'm part of another Discord server where we play and host game shows on a somewhat regular basis in fact, we have games on a schedule that we keep every week. And for that, Bob died on a Saturday, and we did a live stream the next evening on their channel. And I'm going to say the same thing that I said during that because we all had a chance to speak for that. And Bob was instrumental in he was one of a kind. He had a knack for everything like nobody else did. One of the things that will always stand out to me about Bob is that he was the master of the false read. And another thing that I feel like this is something that kind of came to later on, as I hear an echo, somebody watching the stream, that something that Bob really picked up on was having I don't know how well to describe this, but for lack of a better term, a mental clock for how the pace of the show was going. If he needed to speed it up, if he had time to chat with a contestant, or whatever, he just had that ability to just us how to keep the mental capacity of where the show was for time. Because, I know for years while I was hosting, they did very little to no editing on their episodes. It was done live to tape, as live as it could be. Yes, it was recorded in advance, but it was as live as possible. Something went wrong, they would leave it in if it wasn't gonna, if it was appropriate. I know there were times that they did stop tape and have to fix stuff. But Bob just had that capacity to know when to speed it up and when to slow it down. And while this was well after he retired, I had the privilege, as many of you know, to go see The Price is Right. And during all that, yes, I did get to meet Rachel. I'm not trying to make this about that. But, being able to step foot on the stage that bears his name meant a lot to me. Walking up those stairs, the same stairs that contestants usually take. When I win after contestants are all walking up those stairs and just stepping foot and just seeing the entire studio from a completely different perspective was just amazing. And more to the point, when the contestants filed into the Bob Barker studio, they come through the entrance that is the exact same entrance that Bob would use when he would do the audience entrances, when they were playing like Golden Road or Three Strikes or something like that first on the show that day. And during all of this, when I got to be on stage and meet Rachel and all that, we took pictures in front of door number 2. Which, while we were doing that, it kind of clicked in my head that I'm standing basically right where Bob would be when he would make his entrance. So while we're taking the pictures, you're kind of getting the glimpse of what Bob would see when he would walk out of the doors and towards, Janice or, in the later years, whoever else was handing him the microphone. Yeah, whoever was handing him the microphone that day, for the show. And just to be in that spot that day was just, it was awe-inspiring. That's the best way to put it. But I think, while the world has lost a great man, there is the only consolation prize, if you will, that we get from all of this is that Bob is at long last reunited with his late wife, Dorothy Jo.
Yes. And it was and speaking of Bob and Dorothy Jo, at his request, did not want a funeral service. He's if the second command or any other team members can help me out on what I'm about to say, but Bob is deterred with his wife in Glendale, California. Their resting place is they're together. They're side by side. Well, for lack of a better term, but that's.
I'm 99.99999% positive you are correct on that.
And not only is Bob reunited with his wife, but he's also reunited with other other famed famed people that he worked with that were part of his career, like Ralph Edwards and Johnny Olson and Roddy, Mark Goodson.
Yep. Yeah, it's sort of Bill Todman as well. And, some of the producers and directors that passed away that he worked with, like Frank Wayne, the show's original executive producer. I could have sworn one of the early directors for the show passed away at some point. I'm not sure, so I don't want to mention names, but I feel like at least one, maybe a couple of their directors have since left us. But yeah.
Yeah, it's
I gotta say though, Bob made the show what it was.
oh yeah.
I remember back in I want to say it was 2007, Game Shark was doing a list of a special episode of where they would do like a top 10 hosts or something. And, of course, Bob was number one. And in that interview, they were interviewing Wink Martindale. And he said, I want to say to quote him, but I'm not entirely sure this is exactly what he said, so I'm just going to paraphrase it. Bob Barker is The Price is Right. The Price is Right is Bob Barker.
Wink's absolutely right.
And all the people that have come together for Bob, not just the contestants, not just the people who got to work with him and be on his show and all that, but for the fans. All of us right here are all here together because of Bob Barker and because of The Price is Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We would not know each other if it wasn't for this show. Oh, yeah. That's very true. Yeah. And I do say, I'm sorry to cut you off, Martin, but Bob had as much role in me meeting Rachel as my friend Sherry, who sat down that evening. Because Bob was executive producer of Price is Right at the time. Well, when Rachel joined anyway, I am fairly positive had some influence in the decision of hiring Rachel to be a regular model. And trust me, there's plenty of good clips out there with Bob and Rachel. Let's get to the obvious one, the 7 crash. Bob handled it amazing.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. About that, Neil, I happened to catch the show in a rerun today, and it was Rachel's 20th year as a model on The Price is Right, and they did show that clip. I know, I love that. I'm sorry, I'm a little biased when it comes to something with Rachel, but that is the best part ever. And Bob just, how he handled it, just spot on, nailed it.
Yeah.
I thought I'm kind of shifting gears a little bit here, but I think it's a little poetic, but it's also a little bit of a coincidence at the same time that Bob left us, and now the show is about to start its new season in a new studio in a new facility. Without the first time the daytime Price is Right is being filmed outside of the Bob Barker studio. Yeah. It's a little poetic, but going back to this, when you brought up with Rachel on the 20th anniversary rerun that aired on the day we're filming this, I was so happy to see them do such a great show as a tribute to Rachel.
Yes.
So, and politically so, she handed Bob the microphone on his last episode.
That's right.
So yeah, it's come full circle, and there's never going to be another one like Bob.
Nope.
Not anywhere. It's not even close. No, you can't measure that kind of talent. Not at all.
Bob Barker is and will always be the GOAT, the greatest of all time of game show hosts. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
And
I always knew how to bring the best out of the contestants.
yes.
All these years they would always say Bob Barker was a star of the Price is Right. I guarantee you 100% Bob would argue that it wasn't him that was the stars. It was the contestants. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, Bob and contestants. Without Bob and without the contestants, there is no Price is Right as we know it today.
That's absolutely true. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for all the priceless memories. And I just want to give my 2 cents on the tribute to Bob Barker that CBS did back on August 31st. I gotta say it was done tremendously well. I absolutely enjoyed it, and you could hear the tremble in Drew's voice during the tribute, and we all felt that pain, but the retrospective of Bob's career that they highlighted, it was just done fantastic. It was just absolutely beautiful.
And you know what? It actually got to be rerun in daytime on September 4th. On a Monday, September 4th, the day Price is Right celebrated its 51st anniversary.
And I watched that tribute again because of that.
Yeah, and I do believe, I didn't see the rerun of it, but I believe the rerun there had some minor stuff clipped out because, versus daytime,
Of course.
the logistics don't match up, and this is what we walked in. Now on September 4th, I figured it was only appropriate to go on YouTube and upload the very first episode of the daytime show, so that's what I did. I did the same thing. I watched the same episode.
I did too. I watched it on YouTube on September 4th. All right, gentlemen. I thank you for this. Thank you for taking the time to join me as we pay tribute to Mr. Bob Barker. And I know up above he's very, very grateful that we did this very special video for him. And just know that we'll always remember the good times watching him. And for the contestants who got to see him in person, who were on The Price is Right, and I know that they'll always remember the memories.
Yeah. And to repeat what I said in my tribute earlier, Bob, everything you did, you made worthwhile. Thank you.
Yes. So to wrap up this tribute for Bob, just very, very well remind you to help control the pet population. have your pet spayed or neutered. Once again, thank you, Bob, for all the priceless memories.